Another year reaches its end, and damn what an year it was. We've got everything, really. Great indies and memorable AAA releases, so, I think that everyone was happy this year, except, the people who actually make the games. And it was also the first year for me making YouTube videos, which, well, that didn't go that well, but who cares? It's time to see what I liked, what I loved, and what I absolutely abhorred during this year in video games. And the faster I get it done, the faster I get back on spending half my salary on gifts for people I see once a year. Quick question, did we need a Resident Evil 4 remake? No, we didn't need one. The original Resident Evil 4 is a still perfectly playable and functional game even 2 decades after its release, and it's been ported so many times it's giving the original Doom a run for their money to see which game manages to be the first one to be run on a cigarette battery charger. But Resident Evil 4 2023 belongs to a subset of remakes I quite enjoy. Those remakes that understand you can't really do much to improve a perfectly fine game, so they just modernize the gameplay enough to feel different without bastardizing the original, while also providing a different tone, so that both versions still coexist without having one completely replacing the other. You want a darker and more fast-paced experience? Resident Evil 4 Remake will do the trick. You want instead to receive advances by a dubiously aged blondie who's probably suffering from PTSD after being kidnapped by the ungodly progeny of Napoleon and Jimmy Carr afflicted by leprosy? Get some psychiatric help. The one thing I can concede to Max Payne 3 is that it provides exactly what the title promises. It was a pain from start to end. This game should be heralded as proof that participation trophies for middle schoolers are a bad idea, because what you get when you don't explain to kids that sometimes what they make is not worthy of praise and should just be burned to the ground is that they grow up believing that their writing skills are just as fine, and boom! You get Max Payne 3. This was the cringiest and edgiest stuff I've seen coming out of AAA production in a long time. And I'd like to consider the possibility that the writers plastered the script with half of the script just so they wouldn't forget how to spell those words. Also, the combat was crap. I don't get why people are so enamored with it. Return of the Obra Dinn is refreshing. It's a game that treats you like an actual human being capable of thinking by yourself without constant hand-holding. I know, revolutionary stuff. The setup is explained in mere seconds. You play as one of the most evil men on the planet, an insurance company agent, and you board the ship Obra Dinn, and we're tasked to discover who died on the ship and how, by looking through the memories of their last moments before they got crushed, teared apart, or just coughed the lung out. Observation is key. The first couple of corpses might be easy to figure out, but after that you'll need to put your brain at work. This is going to be the prime example I'm always gonna use when thinking of a game that makes me feel smart. It's also going to be a prime example for games that make me feel racist, because for the life of me I couldn't distinguish between the 4 Chinese tough men, so I just kept trying different combinations until the game gave me a pass. World War I is really not cool enough for action games, but it's perfect for an horror game. Amnesia the Bunker did it earlier this year and it was a fun experience. But Ad Infinitum, ooh, it's the polar opposite. A game so bland I barely have anything to say about it, except for the fact that it nails every single issue I pointed out in my 6 reasons why modern horror games are bad. Wink, wink. A boring walking simulator with a pretentious plot, awful scares and poorly designed puzzles and exploration. If the point of the game was trying to be as terrible and soul-crushing as the actual World War I, then I suggest just adding some anthrax inside the case of the game next time to achieve the perfect result. Pikmin 1, Pikmin 2, Pikmin phone stand. I got to play a whole lot of Pikmins this year, and it was hard to pick which one won me over between Pikmin 2 and Pikmin 4, but in the end only one of them had Oachi in it.
Oh my god, you're so goddamn cute!
It might not be the most challenging game, but it's the happiest game, right next to We Love Katamari, except in the time I spent looking at loading screens in Katamari I must have finished like 3 different stages in Pikmin. Did I play worse games this year? Christ, yes. But for me, the only thing worse than a bad game is a bad game that pretends to be smart, and that's exactly what The Last Worker is. It starts off as some kind of homage to Papers, Please, only this time instead of deciding if Grandma Watson gets to see her grandchildren, you'll decide if she'll get her 4-foot-sized dildo in time from Amazon. Not incredibly original, but it could have been a decent setup for a story about the nuances of modern consumerism. But instead it's a trite, predictable, and incredibly basic mainstream plot backed up by a list of big names providing their voice acting. And if you can't see the irony in that, maybe you're the prime audience for a game like this. For some reason there are no longer games that just focus on your character moving very fast. I meant good games that focus on your character moving very fast. Neon White is a parkour fast-paced platformer first, a shooter second, and a very weird dating sim third. It's a game that can appeal to anyone, from more casual players that want a genuine, well-crafted gameplay experience to psychopaths who just want to try and finish the entire game in 14 minutes. A very impressive tech demo disguised as a €50 game. Call of the Mountain relies on the fact that you've never seen a wildlife documentary in your life, or just 15 minutes of James Cameron's Morphs movie. Because aside from looking at the cool scenery while furiously jerking off thinking of how incredible the $600 head cage you're wearing is, you'll be stuck in insanely easy climbing sections and the most boring fights I've had to suffer through this entire year. But there is something to praise about the fact that the devs really wanted their game to match the same lackluster quality of the original Horizon on the PS4. Psychonauts 2 is brilliant and smart. It's a story that approaches with levity the psyche of well-characterized and flawed characters. It's got a dentist level, for those who never moved past the horror of removing a wisdom tooth. It's got a Zelda Wind Waker level. It's got a casino level, to show kids what happens when you buy too many V-Bucks on Fortnite. I have almost nothing bad to say about Psychonauts 2, except for the fact that seeing it overshadowed at release by a much more milquetoast game like Ratchet & Clanking Rip-Off Art reminds me that there is no hope for humanity, and maybe we should pray for a new and this time real millennium bug to strike us. I've got almost nothing good to say about Outlast 2, except for the fact that maybe it's time to pray for a new and real millennium bug to strike. Okay. I'll try to be something this game never manages to be. Serious. This is a title I'm sure I would have enjoyed only at 11, because it seems like the only way it knows how to catch the player attention is by being gross and revolting. In such a childish way, I found it genuinely comedic. Maybe it's a good thing. Otherwise, the awful game design and trial and error structure would have enraged me after 5 minutes. This alone might have not been enough to warrant a second spot in this video, but we can thank whoever in the writing room thought about inserting an unrelated story about a priest who gets a bit too touchy and then dragged it for so long. They played this entire side plot like it was some kind of avant-garde and original twist, instead of what it actually is: predictable, corny, and much like the game itself, very boring. I created a Metal Gear and I'm very proud of it. For every yin, there's a yang, and so for every Zelda game, the universe balances things out by spitting on my face something so bad it manages to briefly extinguish any love I have for gaming in its entirety. Fourth Solis is a terrible thing. I can't call this a game. It is a game only in the sense that you're forced to press buttons to reach the end credits, and by that definition then it would be still less fun and pleasant than a match of Russian roulette. The main characters act like a cast from a Dr. Seuss story, making jokes in the middle of an alien movie, except there is no alien, no story, just an infinite sequence of quick time events, creating an experience so atrocious. The only good thing I can attribute to it is the fact that it managed to earn the very first 0 out of 5 stars on my channel. Congratulations, for Solis, you can join the rest of the burning pile of crap in my collection.